What if a stranger becomes your only family after everyone else abandons you? The question hung in the dusty sunlight slicing through the tall windows of the Willow Creek Community Hall like it had been waiting for Marcus Thompson his whole life. He stood alone in the middle of the scuffed wooden floor, paddle number 17 clenched so tight his knuckles went white. Around him the crowd of his own relatives, and half the town murmured like a swarm of bees ready to sting. Uncle Harlan sat front row with that smug grin, cousins on either side already counting the money they'd make selling off the Thompson Ranch. Marcus's parents had died 2 months earlier in a highway pileup outside Dallas, but the real funeral for his place in the family happened 5 years ago, the night he told them he was gay. "No Thompson boy is going to shame this bloodline," his father had shouted before slamming the door. After that, Marcus became invisible. No more Sunday dinners at the ranch. No more Christmas cards. Just silence and the slow erasure of his name from every photo album. Now the estate auction was the final delete button. Lot after lot of furniture, land, and memories went under the gavel. Marcus had driven 3 hours from his tiny Austin apartment with every last paycheck stuffed in his pocket just to bid on one thing. Grandma's silver locket, the one she'd pressed into his palm the day he turned 16 and whispered, "Keep your heart open, baby." It was the only proof he'd ever been loved without conditions. Lot 47, the auctioneer called. Vintage silver locket, opening bid 200. Marcus shot his paddle up. 250. A cousin countered. 300. Marcus swallowed hard. 350. The numbers climbed fast. 500. 600. His throat closed. The family laughed softly behind their programs. "Can't even save a damn necklace," one muttered loud enough for everyone to hear. The gavel started to fall. Then a voice cut through the room like a clean knife. $1,000. Silence dropped like a stone. Head swiveled. A tall man in a crisp white shirt and dark jeans that somehow looked expensive even in this dusty hall stepped out of the shadows near the side exit. Dark hair neatly styled, jaw sharp, eyes the color of deep river water. Elijah Rivera. No one in Willow Creek had ever seen him before, yet he moved like he owned the place. The auctioneer blinked. 1,000 going once. No one countered. The locket was his. But Elijah wasn't done. He raised the paddle again for the ranch itself. 200 acres, the house, the barn, everything. Bids flew. Uncle Harlan turned purple. Elijah matched every number without flinching, his face calm, almost gentle. When the final gavel cracked down, the entire Thompson estate belonged to the stranger. Uncle Harlan exploded out of his chair. "Who the hell do you think you are? This is family business." Elijah turned slowly, voice steady but carrying to every corner. "Marcus isn't alone anymore. He's my family now." The hall went dead quiet. Marcus's knees nearly buckled. The words slammed into him harder than any fist. Family. A man he'd never spoken to just claimed him in front of the people who had thrown him away. Whispers erupted. Cameras on phones flashed. Marcus could only stare, heart racing, as Elijah walked straight to him, held out the locket, and said softly, "It's yours." Always was. Marcus took the cool silver in shaking fingers. Up close, Elijah smelled like cedar and something warmer, like safety he hadn't known in years. "Why?" was all he could whisper. Elijah's blue eyes held his without blinking. "Because I know what it feels like to stand in a room full of people who are supposed to love you and still feel completely invisible." The crowd erupted behind them, but for the first time in 5 years Marcus didn't feel alone. He felt seen. And terrified. Because no stranger gives away a fortune unless there's a catch. And Marcus had learned the hard way that every catch eventually broke his heart. They stepped outside into the bright Texas afternoon. Elijah's black truck waited at the curb. "I'll drive you back to the ranch," he said. "If you want." Marcus looked at the man who had just bought his entire past for him and nodded. He had no idea what he was stepping into, but for the first time the road ahead didn't feel like it ended in an empty room. The drive to the ranch took 40 minutes of silence broken only by the low hum of the truck's engine and the occasional crunch of gravel. Marcus kept turning the locket over in his hands, thumb tracing the tiny, engraved rows. Elijah didn't push, didn't ask questions, just let the quiet sit between them like an open hand. When the familiar white fence line appeared, Marcus's chest tightened. The house looked exactly as he remembered. Wide porch, blue shutters faded by sun, the big oak tree still shading the swing where he'd come out to his best friend at 17. But now the for sale signs were gone, replaced by the reality that everything belonged to the man beside him. Elijah killed the engine. You can stay as long as you need. The place is yours to live in. I'll handle the paperwork tomorrow. Marcus finally looked at him. You spent over $2 million today on a stranger. People don't do that. Elijah leaned back against the seat, eyes on the horizon. I'm not most people. I grew up in a town a lot like this one, outside San Antonio. Parents found out I was gay when I was 18. Same speech, same slammed doors. I left with one duffel bag and a scholarship to UT. Built a real estate company from nothing because I swore I'd never let anyone take my home again. He glanced sideways. When I saw the obituary and then the auction notice online, something in me snapped. I couldn't watch another kid get erased the same way. Marcus's throat burned. You knew about me? I saw your picture in the local paper 5 years ago when the story broke. The gay Thompson boy. I never forgot the look on your face in that photo. Elijah's voice softened. I kept tabs. Not in a creepy way. Just made sure you were okay from a distance. When your parents died, I knew what was coming. So I came. Marcus stepped out of the truck, boots hitting the dirt. The air smelled like mesquite and memory. I don't know how to thank you. I can't pay you back. Ever. Elijah followed, hands in his pockets. I don't want money. I want you to stop thinking you're worthless because your blood family decided you were. That's all. They walked the porch together. Inside, the house felt both familiar and brand new. Elijah had already arranged for the utilities to stay on. Marcus wandered into his old bedroom, posters still on the walls, the twin bed where he'd cried himself to sleep so many nights. Elijah lingered in the doorway. You don't have to leave tomorrow, he said quietly. Take time. Figure out what you want the rest of your life to look like. Marcus turned. For the first time, he really looked at Elijah, not as a savior, but as a man. Tall, steady, kind eyes that didn't flinch from hard truths. Something warm and dangerous flickered in Marcus's chest. He pushed it down fast. This was gratitude, nothing more. That night Marcus lay awake listening to the creak of old floorboards. Down the hall Elijah moved quietly in the guest room. Marcus clutched the locket and whispered the question again into the dark. What if a stranger really could become family? The thought scared him more than any auction ever had. 3 weeks passed in a blur of paperwork and quiet mornings. Elijah stayed in Willow Creek longer than either of them expected. He worked from the ranch kitchen table, laptop open beside coffee. Marcus learned to make exactly how Elijah liked it. Black, 2 sugars. They fell into an easy rhythm. Marcus cooking simple dinners, Elijah fixing the leaky barn roof. Both of them avoiding the big questions hovering between them. Marcus's old friend Leah, straight, fierce, the only person who never left his side, drove out one Saturday with groceries and warnings. He's too perfect, she said while they sat on the porch swing. No one drops millions without wanting something back. Watch yourself, Marcus. You've been hurt enough. He wanted to argue, but the doubt had already taken root. Elijah never asked for anything, yet every time their eyes met across the dinner table Marcus felt the pull stronger. Elijah's laugh, the way he listened like Marcus's words mattered, the gentle way he touched Marcus's shoulder when handing over tools, it all felt too good to be real. The misunderstanding came on a Tuesday. Uncle Harlan showed up at the gate with 2 cousins and a lawyer, demanding to see the scam artist who stole their inheritance. Elijah met them on the porch calm as ever. Marcus stood behind him, heart pounding. You think you can just waltz in and play savior? Harlan spat. We know your type. City queer trying to buy his way into decent people's lives. Elijah's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed even. The estate was legally auctioned. Marcus has every right to live here. If you have a problem with that, take it up with the courts. The cousins laughed. He's not even family. You're just some stranger playing house. Elijah glanced back at Marcus, something raw flashing in his eyes. Then he said the words that changed everything. He's more than family to me. He's the reason I came back to a town I swore I'd never return to. And if that makes me a stranger who cares more than his own blood ever did, then yeah, I'm guilty. The family drove off in a cloud of dust. Marcus stood frozen. Elijah turned, cheeks faintly red. I didn't mean to say it like that in front of them. I just couldn't listen to them talk about you that way anymore. Marcus's pulse roared in his ears. You meant it. Elijah exhaled. Every word. I've been falling for you since the day I saw that newspaper photo 5 years ago. I told myself I was just helping a kid who needed it. But it's more. It's always been more. Marcus stepped back, the porch rail pressing into his spine. You bought my life because you had a crush? That's insane. It wasn't a crush. It was seeing someone who deserved better and finally having the means to give it. Elijah's voice cracked just a little. I'm sorry if that makes you feel bought. I never wanted that. Marcus walked inside without answering. He locked himself in his old room and cried for the boy he used to be and the man he was terrified of becoming. Because the truth was, he felt it too, the slow, terrifying warmth of falling for the one person who had seen him when everyone else looked away. The next morning Elijah was gone. A note on the kitchen table said only, giving you space. Call if you need anything. The house is still yours. Marcus stared at the neat handwriting until the letters blurred. He spent the day walking the ranch, touching fence posts he'd helped his father mend as a teenager, remembering every time he'd swallowed who he was just to keep the peace. Leah called that afternoon. He left town. Yeah, good. You need time to breathe. But breathing felt impossible. The house that had felt like shelter now echoed with absence. Marcus realized he missed the sound of Elijah's boots on the porch, the way he hummed off-key while making coffee, the quiet way he'd look at Marcus like he was worth every dollar spent. On the third day Marcus drove to Austin, found Elijah's downtown office from a quick Google search, and stood outside the glass building for 20 minutes working up courage. When he finally walked in, the receptionist recognized his name immediately. Mr. Rivera said if you ever came, send you straight up. Elijah's office overlooked the river. He stood by the window in a tailored suit that made him look every inch the powerful man he was. When he saw Marcus, his whole posture changed, shoulders softening, eyes lighting with careful hope. I thought you'd never want to see me again, Elijah said. Marcus crossed the room. I needed to be mad. But mostly I needed to stop lying to myself. You didn't buy me. You gave me back the one thing my family took, my right to exist without apology. Elijah's breath caught. Marcus. I'm scared, Marcus admitted. I've never let anyone close after they all left. But the thought of you walking away hurt more than any auction ever could. Elijah crossed the distance in 2 strides and pulled him into a hug that felt like coming home. No kiss yet, just arms and steady heartbeat and the smell of cedar. Then don't let me walk away, he whispered against Marcus's hair. Let's figure this out together. Slow. Honest. No more secrets. They drove back to the ranch that night talking the whole way, about childhood dreams, about the men they'd lost along the way, about the future neither had dared imagine. For the first time Marcus let himself believe maybe love didn't have to cost everything. Sometimes it just arrived wearing a stranger's face and refused to leave. The confrontation neither of them wanted came at the Willow Creek Fall Festival. The whole town turned out for barbecue and music, but the Thompson clan arrived in force. Uncle Harlan cornered Marcus near the pie table while Elijah was buying drinks. You think you won? Harlan hissed. That city boy is using you. When he gets bored he'll sell the ranch and leave you with nothing. Just like we always said you'd end up. Marcus felt the old shame rise, but this time he didn't swallow it. You're wrong. Elijah didn't take anything from me. He gave me back my life. And if you can't see that, then you're the ones who lost. Elijah appeared at his side, hand resting lightly on Marcus's lower back, a touch that said everything without words. We're not here to fight. We're here because this town is part of Marcus's story. But so am I now. And I'm not going anywhere. The cousins laughed until Elijah quietly added, I've already set up a trust. The ranch stays in Marcus's name forever. No matter what happens between us, he'll never lose it again. The family went silent. For the first time they looked at Marcus and saw not the shame they'd tried to bury, but a man who had chosen his own future. Harlan's mouth opened, closed, and he walked away without another word. That night under the string lights Elijah pulled Marcus onto the dance floor. Slow country song, bodies close but respectful, the kind of closeness that promised more later. You were incredible today, Elijah murmured. Marcus smiled against his shoulder. I learned from the best. They drove home in comfortable silence, but the air between them had shifted. When they reached the porch, Elijah stopped under the porch light. "I love you," he said simply. "Not because I saved you. Because watching you save yourself has been the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." Marcus kissed him then, soft, careful, full of every unsaid word from the last 2 months. The kind of kiss that tasted like healing and new beginnings. No rush. Just two men who had both been left behind finally finding home in each other. Winter came gentle to the ranch. Marcus kept his graphic design job, but started taking on projects that felt like his own, designing pride banners for Austin events, helping other queer kids from small towns tell their stories online. Elijah split time between Dallas and Willow Creek, building a life that included both his empire and the man who had become his center. They never rushed the physical side. Some nights they just sat on the porch swing wrapped in one blanket talking about nothing and everything. Other nights Elijah held Marcus through nightmares of old rejection and whispered that he was enough exactly as he was. The last piece fell into place on Christmas Eve. Marcus invited Leah and a few chosen friends to the ranch for dinner. Elijah cooked a roast while Marcus set the table with his grandmother's china. Halfway through the meal, Marcus stood, locket gleaming at his throat. "I used to think family was something you were born into," he said, voice steady. "But I learned it's something you build." "Elijah, you walked into an auction hall full of people who hated me and chose me anyway. You taught me I was worth choosing. So tonight, I want to choose you back, in front of the people who matter." He pulled a simple silver band from his pocket, the one he'd quietly bought weeks earlier. "I'm not asking for forever yet. I'm asking if you'll keep building this life with me. One day, one choice at a time." Elijah's eyes shone. He took the ring, slid it on, and kissed Marcus right there at the table while their friends cheered. Later, alone under the big oak tree with snow dusting the branches, Elijah held him close. "You know what the auctioneer told me the day I bought this place?" Marcus shook his head. He said, "Son, you're bidding on more than land. You're bidding on a future." I didn't understand then. I do now. Marcus smiled into Elijah's coat. "Best bid you ever made." The ranch lights glowed behind them. Inside, laughter spilled out. Outside, two men who had once been strangers stood wrapped in each other, proof that sometimes the family you need walks in when the world walks out. In this story, I learned that blood doesn't get to decide your worth. The bravest thing any of us can do is let the right stranger in and call them home. If you're carrying the weight of rejection or hiding who you are, remember, your real family is waiting in the people brave enough to see you fully. Choose them. Choose yourself. The life you build together will always be bigger than the one they try to take away.